Neil Magny rebounds from the loss against Damian Maia and gets the split decision victory over Erick Silva. Clearly the judges here in Saskatoon are still not on the same page as the rest of the mixed martial arts world. But you know what they say, don't leave it in the hands of the judges for a reason, because it could have been two judges that saw it for Erick Silva. You look at Neil Magny's strategy. Obviously we talked to his coaches. He's an attribute-based fighter who realizes that, and he sticks to the game plan. You're very impressed with Neil Magny. Why?
Yeah, I'm a fan, man. I think he's a very smart fighter. I love his strategy, even his business strategy. Fight 9 times in 18 months, made $400,000. I mean, the game is where it's at. You get paid what you get. This smart guy has kept fighting. It's also made him better. He's more comfortable in there. He talked about his mental improvements. But I just love, we worked out with Elliot Marshall this morning, and I talked to Neil yesterday. They understand they have a genetic freak. You know, somebody who's genetically individual. He has 7 or 8 inch reach advantage over some people, and he uses it. He stays at the outside, and he told me he keeps you out until you get overly aggressive, and if you get in, he makes you pay there, and you pick where you want to be. And, you know, we talked about this earlier. We pride ourselves at Fight Network on being honest. Are we going to pretend that Erick Silva's body doesn't look entirely different right after the new drug testing era?
Now, we're not pointing the finger, but the question has to be asked. But one thing I want to know, you know, a lot of people say that, you know, Neil Magny taking this fight on short notice, it's a very dangerous proposition. But conversely, for Erick Silva, the same thing. He was getting prepared for Rick Story, a specific type of fighter that's going to use his wrestling abilities to take you down to the ground. For Neil Magny, exactly. It's a very different type of fighter. So who would you give the advantage to when it comes to taking a short fight like this?
If you guys watched our preview show earlier tonight, that's what I asked Neil. You know, and you looked at it and you're like, actually, Neil Magny is very specifically one of the types of guys who, if he's in shape, and it seems like he always is, you pointed out he trains at elevation, he's the type of guy who not only can take a fight on short notice, but he can take an opponent change on short notice, because all Neil Magny wants to do is play the Neil Magny game. It's the other guy who has to deal with that. Whoever you're getting ready for, he doesn't have that big of a reach advantage. He doesn't move his feet like that. He doesn't understand and use range that way. So when Neil Magny is on 2 weeks' notice, that's okay for Neil. He's going to fight the same way he always does. It's tougher for you. It was tougher for Silva.
Erick Silva, kind of a dual specialist. We know that he has stand-up abilities. We know that he's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. The problem is the wrestling aspect does not seem to be where it needs to be, especially in 2015.
Well, the reason I brought up that his body looks different is it's because his whole performance didn't look the way it did. And hey, sure, we can say it's a possible coincidence that it is the drug testing era and he looks totally different, but it is not the only explanation. Illness, severe injury, there's other explanations, but we can't pretend he didn't look different, didn't perform different, didn't have that zip, that explosiveness, that real power, and psychologically he didn't express himself the same way. So take nothing away from Neil Magny. Every Neil Magny performance is a Neil Magny performance, and I enjoy watching that guy fight, always will. But he wasn't, Erick Silva wasn't Erick Silva tonight. I don't know what he's got to do different.
Will the Brazilian be able to rebound from a loss and get himself into the top 10 of the welterweight division? Back to you guys in studio.